Welcome back to my channel, S.Running, and this is Matthew the Midfoot Runner, and today we're going to be looking at the Kiprun KD900X.2. If you've watched any of my previous videos, you know I like to start with the conclusion, and the conclusion is a list of the things or the experiences I've had that I think will impact your experience in this shoe and ultimately your decision to buy this shoe. And I'm going to start this video in a strange way by saying, stop this video and go buy this shoe right now. Wait, hold on. One thing you need to know though real quick before you do that. The sizing on this shoe is a little strange. So for me, I normally wear UK size 12, and in this shoe I went down to a UK size 11, a full size down, and it fits exactly the same as my UK size 12s. So this shoe runs at least a half size large, if not a full size large. But if you're worried about that, don't worry. Later on in the video, I'm going to be doing a fit section where I will try this shoe on next to some more common shoes that are already out there in the market to help you kind of gauge how this shoe really fits so that you're a little more confident when ordering it. Okay, so has everybody ordered their shoes? Good. Let's talk about why you're going to love these. These shoes are a one shoe rotation monster. I have used these across paces and distances, and they have handled all of it. Everything from slow recovery runs at 10 minutes per mile up to sprint speed where I'm moving at 4 minutes or sub 4 minute mile pace. The foam keeps up and it just keeps delivering more and more. And let's talk about that foam first, because that's an important part of this shoe. So it's an aliphatic TPU, very similar to what you see in like the Puma Deviate Nitro Elite 3, which I have here as a comparison shoe. Only this foam is just a little bit softer than that foam in the Puma. And I really think that this ATPU is kind of the foam of the future. I get the sense that this is going to replace PIBA and a lot of the other super foams you're seeing out there. And we're beginning to see it in more and more shoes, including the new Asics Mega and Sonic Blast that are going to be coming out. They both use aliphatic TPU foam within those shoes. So this foam is just a Goldilocks foam and can handle any of the paces and any of the distances you throw at it. And the next thing is the upper. So the Kiprun has several shoes that fall under the KD900 naming convention. There's the KD900X, the original, KD900X LD, LD Plus, X.2. There's so many of them I've forgotten. But what I got the sense was many of those shoes were sort of iterations of the same shoe, and they were just playing around with different elements of the shoe, trying to figure out what worked for them. And I think with this shoe, they've figured out a lot of that. They have improved all the issues they had with the upper, everything from the way that this collar was set up, and I'll talk about these things a little more in depth as we come to the sections on the upper midsole and the outsole. They've improved this collar, much more comfortable, a little bit of padding. They've improved the lockdown of the shoe and the overall fit of the shoe. Kiprun had a tendency with several of their race shoes that they were very low volume, very low slung shoes and felt tight across the ball of your foot. They've improved that. They've added a little bit more material in here to make this a little more democratic. They've improved the toe box shape. Some of them in the past had, this one still, it's curves a little bit here. But in the past, this was more curved and more pointed like this, similar to what the Puma's toe box looks like. So it was rounded in on both sides. But they've improved the shape of this, I think, to be a little bit better for more foot shapes, and it certainly works with my foot shape. And we'll talk about my foot shape when we come to the fit section, so you can help compare how this might fit for you. The laces that were in, I've replaced it with some of the sawtooth laces, partly because I liked the purple, but the laces that came with it were fine. They did their job. The material of the upper is an incredibly lightweight mesh material. It is very akin to what you have in the Puma Deviate Nitro Elite 3, which is that real lightweight mesh, very airy, very breathable. In fact, if you hold this, and it's the reason I have the light out here, if we hold this up in front of the light, you can see the light straight through the shoe. So that's how lightweight and breathable this upper is. Even the toe bumper, where some shoes will have sort of something, a stiffening agent that is put on the inside of the shoe and can be really hard. They haven't done that here. It's a very pliable toe bumper on this shoe, which makes it really comfortable. And then down to the bottom, you've got your carbon plate sandwiched in the middle, which it's a much less aggressive plate than some of the carbon plates that you see. Like the Puma plate is really kind of stiff. I mean, it takes quite a bit to bend that one, whereas this one, I can bend this much easier. And I actually think that that suits this shoe and this foam much better than a very stiff plate. And then back again on the bottom, we've got a healthy layer of the crystal rubber. And I think it's really good, the amount of coverage that they've got on here and where the coverage sits. It's been really grippy even in the rain. So just a very solid shoe. Like I said, this thing is basically a one shoe rotation type shoe. You could get away with just having this shoe for everything. And in fact, to sort of test that out, I've run in this shoe now 5 times back to back, and I've done recovery runs, I've done tempo runs, I did my long run, which was about a 14 miler in this, and every single run I felt amazing in it. I wanted to do more. So phenomenal shoe. But now let's take a look at the specs of this shoe before we get into how this shoe fits and feels. All right, and in the case of the specs, it's a very simple formula. We've got 40 millimeters of stack in the back, 32 millimeters of stack in the front for that traditional sort of 8 mil drop. The shoe weighs in at 6.88 ounces or 195 grams in the sample size. And they list the sample size as a size 8, but like I said, this runs long, so that size 8 is actually a size 9. I'd be curious what this actually runs at in their size 7, because it'll be even lighter weight. And to give you an idea how light that is, this shoe is lighter than the Puma Deviate Nitro Elite 3 that I'm comparing it to. So just an incredibly light shoe. And in my size UK 11, what really is a UK 12, it comes in at only 222 grams or 7.8 ounces. Anything that comes in under 8 ounces for me is just incredible. In fact, the Puma Deviate Nitro Elite 3 is heavier than 8 ounces in my size, and certainly anything like the Mizuno Wave Rebellion Pro Low, still an amazing race shoe, but comes in at well over 8 ounces in my size. So incredibly lightweight. And then also the last spec, and probably one of the most interesting, is the price. This shoe with a carbon plate at the light weight that it is, the foam that it has, all the features it has, the way it locks down, the versatility that it has, this is definitely classed as a racer shoe, but you could also very much use it as a super trainer. And these days, super trainers go for 180 to 220 pounds. The new Asics Mega Blast coming out is going to be about 200 to 210 pounds, I think. So this shoe's not 200 pounds. It's not 180. It's not 150. It's not 130 pounds like the Evo SL. It's not even 120 pounds. As of today, they lowered the price on this shoe to 100 pounds. It's $99.99 on the Decathlon website. That is insane value for this shoe. I would pay 200 pounds for this shoe. If I was given this shoe, said, go for a run in it, a couple runs in it, try it on, see what you think of it, and come back and tell me what you think it's worth, I would have easily come back and said, this is worth 200 pounds. And it's 100 pounds. I got this colorway because it's being discontinued. I got this colorway on sale for 80 pounds. It's incredible. If you can find this colorway for 80 pounds, buy it, because the next one that's coming out, it's the exact same upper, everything. All they've done is changed the colorway a little bit and added a K logo onto the side of the shoe. It's the exact same shoe otherwise. So from a spec point, it has everything that the big players have, and it has it at half the price. I actually went out and bought a second pair of these already, so that tells you everything you need to know. All right, so let's take a look at how this shoe fits on foot then. All right, so this is the part of the video where we take a look at how these shoes fit compared to some test shoes. So I've got the Kiprun KD900X.2 on my left foot. Go ahead and tighten this up. And one thing worth noting is you do tighten this up. We've talked about how this has a wide tongue. It goes down quite a bit down the side. You do have to be careful to sort of get it just right on top of your foot. But once you get it right, it stays flat, stays put. Nice thing is got these two little pads right here on the shoe so that as you tighten it down, these edges of the eyelet chain, these are what actually sort of pull in and create a lot of pressure, not so much these laces. And those little pads help to protect you from that pressure, which is nice. Like I said, I've replaced my laces with some of these sharp tooth laces, but the laces that come with it do just fine. So I think the one that is going to be the closest fit to the Kiprun is the Puma Deviate Nitro Elite 3. So I'll try that one on first. And as always, I've got my Belega Comfort, Hidden Comfort ankle socks on. I know a lot of people use those for their sort of daily runs and stuff, so it's a good way to give you a sense. They do run just a little bit thicker as a sock at the toe and the heel, so that can impact the fit a little bit. Now, I'll put up a picture of what my foot looks like. I have what's known as historically a Greek type of foot from the different, there's some common foot shapes, and mine is the Greek foot shape. So I have a longer second toe than my big toe, and then my outside three toes sort of taper down in length. So these types of shoes, a little bit more rounded toes, do still fit me pretty good, although some don't. And I'll try and put up some of the other specs on my shoe, but just real quick, some things worth noting is I have a slightly wider ball of my foot across the forefoot here than standard. Standard is a D width. I am an E, so not quite a double E, but an E, just a little bit wider than standard. But then I have a very low volume foot, so it sits down low. I don't have a very thick foot. I have a very standard midfoot, and then I have a narrower than standard ball or heel of my foot. All right, so taking a look at these, and like I said, this Puma is a UK 12 EU 47, and so that would also be a US 13, and the Kiprun is a UK 11 EU 46, and what would be a US 12. So we'll see as I put my thumbs down here to show we've got the exact same amount of length at the ends of these toes, even though the Kiprun is technically a full size smaller than the Puma. So very important in the sizing that you go at least a half size, if not a full size down. But then looking at other parts of the shoes in terms of how these fit along the inside, there's really no puckering. I mean, a little puckering here, but not a lot on the Puma. They both are very conformed to both the insides and the outside of the shoe. I have plenty of room across the toe box, have just a little bit of extra material on both of them that allows my foot to move around. And in fact, there's probably even a little extra material on the Kiprun from the Puma, but it doesn't really bunch up here because the lockdown is so good through the rest of the midfoot that this doesn't have to be locked and then pinch and bunch up in there. So very similar fits. Otherwise, in terms of how they fit at all the different points of the shoe, the heel, they both fit the same, don't have, no heel slippage in and out or left to right. They both do a really good job of locking my heel in place. Midfoot's locked in place. Don't need the runner's knot on either of these shoes. So that's the Puma Deviate Nitro Elite 3. We'll quick try on two more shoes. And I'm going to throw a bit of a curveball in here, but it relates to another shoe. So this is the Mizuno Wave Rebellion Pro Low. Now this is not available currently in Western markets, I don't believe. I imported it from Japan to the UK. But this upper, and I have tried on the Mizuno Wave Rebellion Pro 3, which is available widely. And this upper is a spot-on match to that upper. And the reason I'm trying this one on is this one feels like the shape of the toe is probably the most similar in terms of the outline of it. And again, this one is a UK 12 EU 47, the Mizuno is, where this one is an UK 11. And as we'll see on this one has a little bit harder toe bumper, but this one, even though it's a full size larger, actually seems to have less space at the front than the one that is a UK 11. So sizing is very important in these shoes. But I did want to show you these because even though they're the same shape, the sizing is very different on these. Otherwise, the rest of them fits very similar, contoured around the ankle very well. And this one also has this sort of thin edge to it that some of the older Kiprun shoes had. Now, I haven't had any problems with it on the Mizuno. It's low enough down that it doesn't catch my heel or ankle bones. But on the previous Kiprun KD900LD, I did have a problem with this cutting into the side of my foot a little bit. All right, so that's the Mizuno, very similar toe box shape to these. And the last shoe that I will throw into the mix, throw a bit of a curveball in here. We're going to throw in the Topo Cyclone 2. They now have the Cyclone 3 out, but essentially that shoe is the same. The upper has only been modified slightly in the weave of the fabric, but otherwise the rest of the shoe is the exact same. This is one of my favorite shoes to use for really fast, short intervals. I also like to use this to work out in. It obviously has a very different toe shape to it, with this being the foot-shaped toe box. But what I did want to show you in these is Topo is really well known for their lockdown through the midfoot in the heel. And the reason I want to show this is even though these have very different styles of heel, this one has sort of that elf heel to it, the actual feel of these shoes is very similar in how good the lockdown is across the midfoot. Now this one obviously has more room in the toe. I have about the same amount of space at the tip of it, but the lockdown between these two, if you've ever run in a Topo and know that good lockdown they have in the midfoot, very similar feel on this one when you tighten it down. Let's take it back to the video and we'll take a deeper dive onto some of the other parts of this shoe. All right, we've looked at how this shoe fits on foot and compared it against some test shoes to give you a really good idea of how this shoe is going to fit and possibly what you need to do in the way of sizing to get the right size for you. But now let's take a little deeper dive into some different parts of the shoe, and we'll start with the upper. So one of the things I told you about was this heel collar that in previous iterations of the shoe, it had that sort of real razor fine material around the outside of it. And I'll throw a picture of the KD900X.2 up here, which I did own and I sold on, and it had that. And it rubbed into the side of my ankle. Well, they've changed that and gone to a more standard padded collar on here. And it is very minimal padding. I'll see if that camera can kind of pick that up decently. It is minimal padding in here, but it's just the right amount of padding up around the top to really help facilitate that lockdown feeling. It has just enough here that it wraps up over your heel bone and locks you in. In terms of the heel counter, we've got a really soft heel counter. It just squeezes, very pliable. But it does feel like down here at the bottom, there's just like a little piece that sticks up, maybe 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch back here, that gives it just a little bit of something so that your heel can't slide out the back of the shoe. And then on top of that, we've got these just slight sidewalls on the lateral and medial side to help keep your foot centered inside of the platform there. So they've done a really good job of fixing this heel area. All the issues that they had in different iterations of this shoe previously have all been solved back there. I haven't had a single problem. The tongue is quite a thin tongue. It is not gusseted. I know a lot of people really like gussets. I tend to steer away from gusseted tongues. The reason for that is I have a very low volume foot, so it sits quite low in the shoe. And what happens with a gusseted tongue is that material that sort of wraps over the side. What happens is when I tighten it down, it gets kind of bunched up on the sides of my foot. So gusseted tongues can cause me some problems. This one isn't gusseted, but it is incredibly wide. So what it does is it sits really nicely on top of the foot and sort of encases the foot and allows you to tighten it down and feel really locked in. And because it's this faux suede material, I find that material on a lot of the slippery socks that they sell these days, those real thin running socks that can be kind of slippery, this suede material grabs onto those socks really well and helps lock your foot into place. So no problems with the tongue. Got the little lace loops to keep the tongue in place. The toe bumper, I talked a little bit about that already. And what's nice about this, like I said, it's sort of like a plastic painted material on top of here. And it's not overly built up underneath and on the inside of the shoe. So if your toe is like mine, my family toe, it kind of sticks up at the end. and can sometimes rub on these toe bumpers. I don't get any of that rubbing sensation in this, and it certainly doesn't hurt. All right, so now let's dive back into that midsole. Like I said, this is an aliphatic TPU akin to what we're seeing in a lot of the super shoes and super trainers these days. But one of the things I find about this particular formulation of it is I find it to be a little softer than most of the ATPUs that I've felt in other shoes. Now that could come down to the slightly less aggressive plate, or maybe where the plate's positioned, but the foam itself feels just a little bit softer, and thus it's just a little bit more accommodating on different styles of run. And even though it's softer, I don't feel, it's not the type of softer where you feel like you're giving something up in the speed department. You don't sink in and then disappear and not have that pop back. In fact, I think the opposite is happening here. I feel like you sink in just that little bit more in a way that allows you to compress the foam more, and then you get an even more explosive response out of the foam when you're moving fast. And I really noticed this on my interval run my progression run, where I was picking up the speed by a little bit over and over and over. And by the time I got down to, I think I started at about 7:45 per mile pace, and it slowly moved down and got down to about 6 minute per mile pace. And by the time I got down to 6 minute per mile pace, this thing felt like it was just exploding off the ground for me. It was really, really responsive. So this foam, like I said, is a Goldilocks foam for me, and it's part of the reason why I bought a second pair, because finding a shoe that feels this good underfoot, no matter the distance, no matter the pace, makes this a very relevant shoe for me, and something that I can just pick up and go. You can take this on holiday and know that you're going to be able to do whatever your run is. So some other things though about the outsole, like I said, it's not that aggressive of a plate. It bends fairly easily, but why I don't think that matters and actually is helpful in this shoe is there's oftentimes the perception that the plate is doing a lot of that work of allowing you to spring off. And they keep showing time and time again as they look at this, that although the plate adds a little bit to it, the primary role of the plate, and this is a true flat plate, it's not like a heavy spoon plate that dips way down like you see in the Puma. This one, if you can follow the line across, is a little bit more of a gentle type spoon, or I think they call this a shovel plate is the style. But really what this plate does is it stabilizes the platform. And what that actually looks like is, if you think about the bones of your foot and everything, and as you land and you push down on something, you're going to naturally push more weight through certain parts of your foot just based on your foot strike and how far up you are on it and just how your foot mechanics work. And what you don't want is when you hit for certain parts of your foot to push down more than others. What you really kind of want is when you hit, that plate takes the pressure from the parts that are pushing down and pushes all of the foam down, so that you're compressing the whole pad of foam at the same time with about the same amount of compression, rather than compressing it more or less in different spots. That allows you to make use of all of the foam as you drive through your stride. So it's really sort of this stabilizing agent, and as the foam is squishing down and squishing out, it maintains a level surface so that you're really staying level and making use of all the foam. So this not being an aggressive plate, you're not really losing much. And in fact, I think it helps with the fact that you then can compress all of this ATPU foam, which is just so responsive and so enjoyable. This has basically replaced my Hoka Cielo X1 as the funnest shoe for me to run in. I just enjoy every moment in this shoe. Well, actually, one more thing worth noting on here is, and this is part of what I think keeps this shoe quite stable despite having a fairly narrow midsole, midfoot area here, is there are none of these big cutouts on the lateral or medial side. You do have the channel running down the center that shows the plate, although it's not all that deep. and the little channel back here that it gives some room for the foam to compress and squeeze. But you don't have those big cutouts on either side like you see in a lot of the race day shoes that can create some instabilities in the shoe. So this shoe is quite stable. In fact, probably it's one of the more stable race shoes that I've felt, just simply because it has that foam like that. And what I would say it sort of feels like, if you have the new Rocket X3, the Hoka Rocket X3, this feels stability-wise just like that shoe. And I think it's because that one has that same bits of foam going down both the lateral and medial side and no cutouts. So incredibly stable for this. It makes it a very capable racer shoe. All right, so now let's talk outsole. Not a whole lot to report here past what I've already said. We have this sort of crystal rubber on the bottom that you see in a lot of the new race day shoes and a lot of the shoes coming from the Chinese brands. But the one thing that I wanted to point, well, two things I want to point out. One is just the sheer amount of coverage that they have on here. There's a lot of coverage on here. I don't know if it comes out in the camera, but it's this whole pad back here, and then it's this whole thing up here along the side is all rubber coverage up to here, and then all of the forefoot. And what's impressive about that is if you think about the weight of this shoe, 195 grams, that is a lot of rubber coverage. So this is going to be a very durable, long-lasting shoe, because typically these rubbers are really durable. And with the sort of 35 miles I think I have in this, or a little bit more, I don't see a single bit of wear in this rubber. So it gives me a good idea that it's going to be durable. And the second thing is the way that this rubber rides all the way up this lateral side. I think it's really important to the way that this shoe rides, because what it does is, by having that piece here, especially for me as a midfoot runner, where I'm sort of landing somewhere right about here, I'd say, is there's still rubber under my foot, where in a lot of shoes that pad back here cuts off here, and then the midfoot rubber doesn't start till up here. So when I land here, I not only get some traction from that, but it adds some stability kind of to the shoe and keeps it from torsionally, twisting around and doing funny things. And it just gives me this really good sense of, as I land on my midfoot, rolling forward and then rolling across onto the forefoot of the shoe, it just creates a really stable and really comfortable, confidence-inspiring ride. So I think that rubber is playing a role in how this shoe rides and how stable it feels. All right, so my final thoughts on this shoe are pretty simple. If you look at the weight, the performance, the versatility, the design, the materials, everything involved in this shoe, and the price alone, £100 for all of this. This shoe is easily the best value shoe of the year. This is a better value than the Evo SL, than the Nova Blast 5, than the Adidas SL2. This is easy. It's even better than my beloved Topo Spectre 2, which I absolutely love that shoe. This shoe takes the place of all of those shoes. You can use it for every training run. You can use it to race in. It's comfortable, it's protective. I mean, the only thing that I could say that they could maybe improve is a little bit of the design aesthetic, but with the new colorway that's coming out, they've improved on that as well. So they've kind of nailed everything in this shoe, and it's something that I think everybody should take a look at and give it a try, because you just won't be disappointed. In fact, I'm struggling to fit other shoes into my rotation because I'm just consistently thinking of pulling this shoe because it does everything well. So yeah, those are my final thoughts on the Kiprun KD900X.2. Please do like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you have a chance, check out some of the playlists that I have on my channel. I've really tried to curate some of the best running content, whether that be shoe reviews or things about training, nutrition, other things, into playlists on my channel, because that's really the goal of my channel, is to try and curate the best running knowledge that I can find right now. And any feedback or comments that you have around my videos, ways that you think I can make this better, especially around the fit portion of these videos. I think that's one of the most important things, is to show how a shoe fits, because it's so important to our experience in these shoes. So if there's a way I can improve that part of the video, please let me know. Other than that, that's it for me. Let's get out there and run.